Hi, I'm Dana, and a little while ago I made a honestly quite depressing video about some of the ways in which I just didn't realise that I was in an abusive relationship. And as with a lot of my videos, I do think that it's an autistic thing because I'm autistic and that was my experience of it. I'm not in any way trying to say that exclusively autistic people experience it in that manner, or that like only autistic people are abused or anything else. Like I had to delete a few comments where I was like, I don't really know where you're getting this from and it's a bit weird. So I just want that disclaimer out there. Like I'm not trying to say that like this exclusively happened to me because I'm autistic. Like abusive people exist in lots of different areas and lots of different walks of life and target lots of different types of people. Lots of people go through abuse in many different ways. I'm just sharing some of my experience and hoping it can help people out a little bit. So on the tangent of that, reading a lot of comments from that video, which I will link on screen somewhere. I haven't done it in ages. I don't remember which side it is. I think it'll be here. It'll be on screen somewhere. I'll link that video if you haven't watched it. But a lot of the comments made me really start to think about why I stayed in that relationship for so long, why so many of those things were normalised to me, why I just assumed, and why everything around me pointed to all green flags and the fact that it was an okay relationship when it really, really obviously wasn't to anyone on the outside. And a lot of it comes down to my family, the way that I was raised, the way that the people in my life growing up treated me and the way that they treated each other and just the way people were around me definitely contributed a whole lot to it. And I completely stopped talking to my entire family just over 2 years ago now, because they're abusive and neglectful and they weren't being kind to me, and it wasn't a healthy relationship and it wasn't one that I could save. Like I kept trying to make it healthier and trying to work on things and it didn't feel like it was salvageable. And in doing that and in realising that it wasn't a healthy relationship and realising that I'm better off not being a part of it, I started noticing all of the little things that I just hadn't noticed during my entire life weren't kind ways to treat people or like, see, I'm always really reluctant to call my family abusive. And it is very much the thing of like so many people had it worse, you know, like my family were never violent towards me. My family were rarely violent towards me, so that makes it okay. Like it doesn't, I know realistically, logically, if someone else gave me the stories that I have to tell, I'd be like, that's an abusive family. But I don't feel overly able to say that personally. But whatever it wasn't fucking nice. So I'm gonna get into the points now, and it's just the things that I really did not notice weren't normal, healthy dynamics to have between people, never mind within a family. So the first one was the one that actively upset me as a child. My whole family saw me cry about this and just didn't care. And that was that all of my nicknames were really fucking mean. Like, they weren't all super mean, but I never had nice nicknames, you know? The main one was Brat. I was constantly being called a brat. It wasn't nice. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't a Brat Summer kind of vibe. It was literally a nickname to like humiliate me over the tantrums that I had. But they weren't tantrums. They were autistic meltdowns. They were moments of like exceptional overwhelm and emotional distress for me that my family were then literally just taking the piss out of with a little nickname. It wasn't nice. I didn't enjoy it. Most times that they called me that, I would start crying and it would upset me and they'd be like, see, she's being a brat again. Like it was used as a way to like humiliate me essentially. And that was the way that the vast majority of my nicknames were. Like I was also called Dan quite a lot, which I didn't mind. But other than that, my nicknames were mean. They were like condescending, they were rude, they weren't nice, you know? And I think it especially got to me because my brother's nicknames were just shortened versions of their names. They didn't have any sort of like unrelated to their name nickname. But the thing is, I remember that I used to get upset over the nicknames, but I only remember being called Brat. I don't remember vast chunks of my childhood. And it's things like that where I'm like, I don't want to sit here and be like, my family were abusive because they called me a brat. But it was all of the little things like that that piled up and piled up. And because they were little things, I didn't notice, so I normalised them, or I was like, oh, I can just excuse it, it's just a little thing. But there were so many of them. Another one that's, again, very much from growing up, was that the vast majority of like the little family stories that we had that everyone would laugh about and that we'd retell were things happening to me that I didn't enjoy. Like, it was stuff happening to me that I found overwhelming, that was just actively kind of mean. It was just stuff that wasn't fucking fun for me, but everyone else found it funny and laughed about it, and I'd just be sat there kind of feeling like shit. Like, one of the main stories that got told was that when I was like 3 years old, and keep in mind for a lot of these that my brother's 8 and 9 years older than me, it was a snow day and my mum had like dressed me up to go out in the snow, and we were all outside, and my brother thumped the shed so that all the snow on the roof fell on me and just completely encased me. And it's one of those things where like I don't remember it, but I've always hated being cold. I've never enjoyed the snow. I've always been like jumpy and edgy and like a bit scared when it's snowing, and that's probably fucking why. It's clearly not a fun time for a kid, and you probably should have told my brother off for it, but everyone just laughed, and it's a funny like childhood story. And it's stuff like that where like I know that's not like the worst thing anybody's ever done to somebody, but every story was like that, you know? It was somebody doing something to me or something happening to me that just wasn't fun for me. Like, another one was when I was about, I think I was maybe 4 or 5. We went to visit family in Denmark, and we'd driven there, so we'd gone through Holland, and we'd stopped at some like little service station, and we'd all gotten food, and I was an exceptionally fussy eater as a kid. I really struggled with food. We'd been driving for like fucking hours. I remember being really hungry, and I'd gotten a big plate of chips. It was one of the few times that my parents let me have a meal that was just chips, because my mum was a very like, no, you need to have like a protein and a vegetable, and like I didn't get to have just a plate of chips very often, but they wanted just no fuss, don't fuck around, here's your plate of chips, eat it, let's go. And I'd picked up the salt and spread it on, and picked up my chips, and as I'd like picked up my chip, my dad had picked up the salt to put it on his, and I was like, oh wait, that's sugar, that's not salt, that's sugar. And my family were like, oh, Dana's put sugar on her chips. And it became this whole thing where everyone laughed at me, and it was a whole thing that was retold for years as though it was like the funniest thing in the world, which it's just not that funny anyway. But it's also like, I only had sugar on my chips because I was the first one to try and use the salt. Everyone else also thought it was salt. I'm pretty sure that I'd asked if it was salt. In fact, I asked about everything as a fucking kid. I didn't like just using things. And if I hadn't immediately eaten it and been like, oh wait, my dad would have also had it on, and so probably would have everyone else, because we all had chips. Who isn't putting salt on your chips? You know, like, it just, little things like that where I was just made to feel so silly and stupid all the time for such minimal little things. Like, that's the thing, is the stories were always such minimal things. It was never like really like telling something horrible about me ever, you know? But it was just the way that it was told made out that I was like so stupid and ignorant and just silly. So moving on to when I was a bit older, one of the big things that like was a very big contender in me cutting them off and being like, I can't, like, I just physically, emotionally, mentally can't do this anymore, was that I was absolutely expected to drop anything if they needed help with anything. So my brother was one of those people that was always working on his car out on the street. If you're British, you know the one. Every street's got one. Not every street, but like, you know the ones. That guy that's just always working on his car and he's got all his tools spread out on the street. That was my brother. And I, at least 4 different times, I had to like, I was working at a video shop volunteering at a video shop at the time, and I had to like text my boss and be like, I can't come in today. My brother needs me to sit in his car with him for 5 hours while we drive to Cambridge to pick up an engine, and then drive back with it and fucking drag it through the house into his backyard garden. And for like people that don't know, engines, car engines, fucking massive, really heavy. So I'd sit in his car with him for 5 hours with him just chattering absolute bollocks and playing the shittest fucking music. Get to the place, inevitably it's some like big burly man that's selling it to him, and he looks at me and goes, I'll help you get in the car, mate. So there was no reason for me to do this long ass fucking drive and waste my entire day. And then we'd get back to the house and I'd be like, so how are we doing this? Have you got a crank, you got a dolly, you got anything? And he'd be like, no, we're carrying it through. And I'd be like, I can't physically help you. Like, me and you, this like, admittedly, my brother was fairly strong and about 6'1", but like kind of scrawny at the same time. Like, me and him carrying an engine through the house, like, we did it multiple times and it was a fucking nightmare. I never wanted to do it. I was never asked and then agreed. It was always like a weird trick manipulation thing to get me to do it. I fucking hated it. And there were just little things like that all the time where I would like have a plan for a day. I'd have something I was trying to do. I'd be living my fucking life as an adult, and all of a sudden I'd just have to drop whatever it is that I had planned, whatever it is I was in the moment of doing. Like, there were times that I was literally like with my ex or like with friends, and I'd be like, oh, my mum's coming to pick me up at 24 years old because she needs me to help her with something, or my brother wants my help with something. I've got to go now. Like, see ya, I'm sorry. because it was just expected of me to drop anything I was doing to help them with absolutely whatever bollocks they wanted, whether it was something I was realistically capable of or not. And the thing is, like, that's already not great. That's already not a good thing to be doing to someone. It's not very nice, is it? But the thing that really fucking got to me, and that's the thing, is like, a lot of it with cutting them off was that it was just never fucking reciprocated, you know? Like, I didn't get it back, and they'd constantly preach like, oh, we do so much for everyone, we do this and that. And I'd be sat there thinking like, yeah, and I'll help you do it all. I don't know what I'm getting in return here. Like, I don't know what I'm getting back. Like, one of the last things that my mum said to me when we had like our big argument and falling out before I just walked out and didn't see her again was, you're not gonna know what life's like without us doing everything for you. And it's one of those things where, like, it played in my head all the time for like months and months as I was going about my life, because I was like, nothing's changed. Literally, like, she'd occasionally, like, she'd treat me to stuff at the charity shop because my ex wouldn't let me like buy anything or pay for anything. She'd treat me to like clothes in the odd grocery shop. Like, I was definitely like slightly financially better off. But like, my day-to-day life, my general struggles, my general like effort to do things and whatever, my life became easier. Like, actively easier, because it was just never fucking reciprocated. Like, I had times that I had to reschedule moving house because no one would help me. And I say all this with, like, my brother was unemployed. Like, he wasn't doing anything. Like, he could have just helped me, but he'd be like, I've already planned to watch Top Gear that day. Like, it was the most inane bollocks. He'd be like, no, that's my plan. That's what I'm doing. And this was also my middle brother that wasn't even autistic. You know, like, it just did not give a shit about me, but expected me to give the deepest of shits about them. Now, one that lasted my entire life, like, this was, I'm pretty sure it was probably out the womb. Like, I probably popped out and they were like, oh, I popped out the womb and they were like, oh, she's a funny colour and her toes are stuck together. Like, my toes aren't stuck together. I have that thing where, like, Tom Cruise has it. Watch the interview where Tom Cruise talks about his toes if you want to know. But yeah, like, literally, from the moment I popped out of the womb, people just had shit to say about me. And by people, I mean my closest, most beloved family members. And growing up as an overweight, undiagnosed autistic lesbian, I was not having fun. I was not having fun. Every day of my life, I had some sort of fucking subtle dig thrown my way. And sometimes I wouldn't even register until like hours later in the day, and I'd be like, great, I'm in the middle of my year 6 disco and I've just realised that my mum was telling me that my arse looks fat in these jeans. Like, brilliant. Like, just constant digs about my looks, my weight, my behaviour, like any little like awkwardness that I had. Just absolute constant ribs about everything. Like, from the moment I woke up in the morning and my mum brushed my hair as a kid, she'd have something to say about how my hair's always so knotty. Why can't you just keep it like nice? Why does it always have to tangle? Like, and it was absolutely always stuff that could be played off. Like, even the bigger things could be played off. So one of the things that actually really upset me, like, this part's kind of deep, guys. One of the things that really upset me was, so my oldest brother's gay and he came out when I was like 7 or 8. Like, I pretty much was always aware that he was gay, and that was because he was out to the family. So when I came out, everyone was like, that's not a big deal, get over it. Oh my God, we already have a gay in the family, whatever, who cares? And yet, when I had my first girlfriend, when I was like, oh, like 24, 25, no one would refer to her as my girlfriend. It was always your mate, your friend, that girl you're with. Like, no one would refer to her as my girlfriend. And then the little like cherry, I mentioned my brother because we always referred to his boyfriends as his boyfriends. When he was engaged, we referred to his fiancée as his fiancée. Like, there was never any sort of like homophobia or disregarding or like invalidation of his relationships as a gay man. But my relationship as a gay woman, that didn't exist at all. To the point that Christmas that I had my girlfriend, my mum was like, oh, I've gotten you a joint present, aren't you excited? And I was like, oh, I am a bit actually. Like, my relationship's being taken seriously, even if you won't call her my girlfriend and you introduce her to people as my friend and tell her. Like, it was a whole thing. She'd gotten us matching best friend fucking bangles, bracelets, best friend bangles. And I'd already had multiple conversations with my mother specifically being like, she's not my friend, like, explicitly, she is not my friend. I don't do the things with her that you do with your friends. Like, she is not my friend. I love her. Like, she is my girlfriend. Like, I'd had that conversation multiple times. And the last Christmas, before I just stopped talking to them, she got me fucking best friend bangles to wear with my girlfriend. Like, not everything was quite as obvious as that, but it was constant. It was always stuff like that. Everything about me was always just invalidated and brushed off and seen as like a little bit silly and a little bit ridiculous, and it's just a phase. Like, even when I started watching Doctor Who as an 8-year-old, and I was like, we need to go to Cardiff. I need to go to Cardiff. Especially when I started watching Torchwood, I was like, I have to go to Cardiff. And then when we moved to Denmark, I was like, I'm never going to get to go to Cardiff. And then we moved back to the UK, and we moved specifically to Wales, and I was like, I need to go to Cardiff. And so it was during Will and Kate's fucking wedding, we were driving down, and like my mum planned this whole weekend. And it's one of those things where, like, I've had people in past comments be like, oh, you say your parents are abusive, but they took you on holidays. She took me on a weekend to Cardiff, and the entire time she was like, you'd better enjoy this while it lasts. This is just going to be a phase still. Like, we are specifically here because this phase that you're in of liking Doctor Who has lasted so far for like 6-7 years at that point. Like, constant, consistent, main thing, love it, always talking about it, going off about it, Doctor Who was my thing. This phase had lasted long enough that I'd like earned the right to visit Cardiff, but it also obviously wouldn't be continuing because it was just a phase, like they'd been saying for the last 6 or 7 years. So I'd better enjoy it while I could, because in a few months or years time it's just going to be a phase, and I won't even care that I've been to Cardiff. And I still think it's really fucking cool that I went to Cardiff. It was over 10 years ago. I still think it was sick. I still want to go again. Like, and it's the thing of like, even when she was doing like even when my family were doing nice things for me, it was done with the thing of like, enjoy it while you can, or like, it was always done with a condescending tone. It was always done with like a Dana's silly little thing, you know. It was never, I was never allowed to actually enjoy the thing that was being done specifically for me to enjoy it. Like, just let me enjoy it, Christ. Now, one of the big things that upset me as a kid was that nothing I ever did was good enough, and especially a lot of it was compared to my brothers. Like, any grades that I got, if I did well in school, it was like, oh, well, they did it first. But one thing that they hadn't done first was I was really into like musical theatre and choirs and general like anything creative, doing art, doing performances, any of that kind of shit I really loved as a kid. So I was a part of like, you get to be a part of lots of different stuff as a kid, and obviously your parents come to see you do it. Everyone's parents come. My parents felt the pressure of like everyone else's parents are going. They didn't want to be seen as like the parents that don't show up, you know? Like, so much of our family was about images and looking like we all loved each other and looking like we were the perfect family. And there were so many performances that I was so excited for, that I'd like really worked hard towards and really practiced for and really enjoyed doing and really like loved the performance, you know. I was like, I'm part of something here where we're doing something cool. I'm proud of this. Like, I actively had pride in things as a kid that I literally have not been able to have since, probably because of this shit. And no matter what it was, and no matter how proud of it I was, and no matter how happy I was after stuff, I remember just so many things like that, so many performances where I'd leave the theatre, leave the room we were singing in, and I'd go out to my parents, who had already gone to the car. I often had to go meet them by the car while everyone else got to like meet their parents in the halls and whatever. And we'd get in the car, and they'd immediately be like, oh, that girl that sang second, wasn't she good? Oh, she was brilliant, wasn't she? Oh, she was so good. And they'd just compliment like everyone that was there that wasn't me. And it was never that they said that I wasn't good, you know, like that's, like I brought up a lot of these things with my mum, and she would be like, well, we never said you weren't good. And it's like, no, but you never said that I was. You said that everyone else was. You were nice about everyone else. And then you just wouldn't say anything about me. And especially as I got a bit older, I'd hear like other people's stories about what they did after the last show and what they did after this and what their parents treated them to. So I had a few shows where I'd get in the car afterwards and be like, oh, can we get pizza? Can we get McDonald's? Can we do this? Can we go here? And they'd be like, why would you do that? And I'd be like, because we did the show. And they'd be like, okay, but why would we do that? Because you got to do that. I'd be like, well, other people's parents do it. And they were just like, no, why would we do that? And I will give that my dad tried to be more like encouraging and supportive of like my creative pursuits. Like, he often, like, after we got home, when it was just me and him, would be like, hey, good job there, babe. I'd be like, thank you. But like, a lot of the like positive and nice interactions that I had with my dad were very much when it was me and him. Like, as a part of the family unit, he was often just there and quiet, or a lot of the time not there at all. Like, my dad did not see a whole lot of the stuff that went on because he was often at work or just in his office. And that's where, like, a lot of the time I don't mention my dad because he was in the house. Like, he was technically right there, but it also sort of just didn't feel like I had a dad. Like, he just wasn't there, you know? Like, he was there, but he wasn't. And this is getting a little bit lengthier than I intended it to be. So my very last little point is going to be quite a quick one, because I think it's quite fucking obvious. But they encouraged me to stay in an abusive relationship, like actively encouraged it. Again, this is one that my dad gets left out of because he died when I was 18. He did not see when the abusive relationship had got bad. He saw nothing negative of my relationship and really liked my partner at the time. Like, he's entirely left out of this one. But my mum and my brothers had multiple times that I would show up at their house at 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 a.m. Like, middle of the night near enough, sobbing, crying, bag packed, being like, I can't stay with him, whether it was that I was trying to leave him or whether he was trying to break up with me, and I was like, yes, I'm going, like, see you. I'd fuck off. I'd go to my mum's house, I'd be sobbing, I'd be an absolute mess, I'd be, he's done this, he said this, he made me feel like this, he did this. You know, like, I would have 40 minutes worth of chatter about what he had done and said and how he'd made me feel, and just generally the abuse that I was going through with him over a cup of tea. And once I'd calmed down a little bit and gotten it all out, they'd be like, you're gonna talk to him about it though? Like, you annoyed him, he got angry, it's not really his fault. Like, you've got to see it from both sides, haven't you? I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here, because you've got to do the right thing, and like, relationships are hard and they take a lot of work. It's not worth leaving a whole relationship over that, is it? And they'd just slowly talk me around, and then I'd be, yeah, you're right, like, he's really not that bad. Like, so many people out there are so much worse, and I just need to work on this relationship, and I need to do better, and I need to make it work. And in some ways, I get it, and I feel a lot of, like, empathy and sympathy towards my mum in that regard, because although, like, from my perspective and what I saw, my dad was a pretty fair, like, decent guy, I'll never know what it was like to be in a relationship with him, thank God. And I know that from, like, the generation that she was of and, like, the people that were around her and the way that she was raised, it was very much like, it does not matter what this man does to you. It doesn't matter if he starts beating shit out of you. Like, whatever your man does, you stick with him, you remain with him, you make sure everything looks fine on the surface, you don't tell anybody about what the fuck is going on if he's being horrible, and you make it work. But it's also one of those things where, as much as I can feel like a lot of empathy for the fact that she had to make a relationship work no matter what, and I will never know how good or bad that relationship was between her and my dad. I will never know what she went through with people before. You know, like, I will never know my mother's experience, and I can only assume that, given that was her, like, tactic and thought and advice, it wasn't a fucking nice one. But it still wasn't advice to be giving me, you know? I think when you're hearing your kid tell you that someone's been screaming in their face, you say that's not a nice thing to do, not, well, what did you do to them? You know, it's little things like that where I'm like, okay, like, I'm not expecting you to have absolutely learned everything. I get that it's also your first time living and all of that stuff. But there's some things that are just sort of common sense and logical, and it's just feeling empathy for somebody. And there's something lacking here that meant that I stayed in a really horrible relationship and was actively encouraged to go back to a horrible relationship multiple times across 8 years. So yeah, that was my last point. This is one of the longest videos I've ever filmed at this point. I don't know how I've been talking this much, I won't lie to you. Even Otis is like, please bitch, you are boring me to sleep here. Oh, you're not, you're interested. Oh, baby. But yeah, that's me over and out for this video. I don't know what I expect you to comment on this, because it is just a bit dark and heavy. So I'm not going to do a little, like, share your family trauma. Like, comment whatever you want. I don't know what I'm expecting. I'm not going to prompt anything from you. I feel a bit, like, as much as I joke around everything, it is quite a vulnerable topic to share. So I'm not going to, like, expect anybody to share anything in the comments. But, like, whatever you do want to share, you're welcome to. It's an open, safe space. I won't let anyone be a dick. If I start, if you get mean replies or anything, I will delete them. Like, I try and keep it a nice space, you know. Oh my God. I post to you on Thursdays, Tuesdays and Sundays. I don't know why I said it in that order. If you want to see, please give me a like and a subscribe. If you want to see more, you can also follow me over on TikTok or Instagram. If you want to help me out even more, you can follow me over on Patreon and pay to get content early and various other things eventually. Or you can do a one-time donation over on Ko-fi, buy me a coffee. I get myself little treats with it, or sometimes it just straight up helps me survive. Christ, yeah, whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you have a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, month, year, and I will see you again in a couple of days.